Welcome to Coffee and Contemplation, a Stranger Things podcast. I'm Robin.
I'm Heidi.
And we have reached the Season 3 finale, Chapter 8, The Battle of Starcourt.
Ah.
Coffee selections for today. We actually went to the Frederick Coffee Company again. I got the specialty latte, the Ninja Turtle, hazelnut, caramel, and chocolate, and it's actually one of my friends, Neville. It's one of his favorite drinks. It's a very decadent treat on this here warm late spring day.
I got the strawberry shortcake latte. Just so curious that I couldn't resist, and I was kind of expecting it to be like a frappuccino, just like very, very like saccharine sweet, but it's really not. Coffee, amaretto, vanilla, and strawberry, but the strawberry is like nice and subtle. It's not overpowering, so yeah, I like it.
And now that we've acquired coffee, let's proceed with contemplation. So before we delve into the beat for beat breakdown, I want to revisit that quote that I recited back at the beginning of this season from Worlds Turned Upside Down. After 2 very intense seasons in dark spaces with grim monsters and claustrophobia-inducing tunnels, Matt and Ross Duffer decided it was time to brighten things up, literally, with a Somerset storyline fueled by young love and raging hormones. Quote, aesthetically, it's going to feel very different, Ross Duffer says. I think there will be a sense of fun and joy. Adds Levy, quote, if Season 2 was about the desperate desire for normalcy, Season 3 is about change, end quote. So very much like with Chapter 1, I want to keep that in mind and circle back to it in our final thoughts. So, actually not unlike the Vanishing of Will Byers, I thought that the finale opened in Starcourt. Like, I thought we cut right back to 11 and all of that, and that we get to that pretty quickly, but it actually begins with the smash in on the Joyce Murray Hopper group speeding towards Starcourt, and Murray getting nothing on the radio anymore because they've all been knocked out, all the Russian dudes.
Yeah.
We don't know it's your kids, but Joyce knows better. It absolutely is. And then we cut back to Starcourt where Elle is still screaming and her leg is now glowing from the inside. They basically proceed to do surgery on her leg, and then she has to do it herself using her
Yeah, like, there's a couple of things going on there that I'm not going to say enjoyed, but that I thought were really compelling. I thought it was very fitting that Jonathan is like, okay, we gotta open that up, and we gotta get that thing out of her. He goes straight to a place where he's going to be able to find a knife that's going to be sufficiently sharp. He thinks to sanitize it, and he also thinks to get something for her to bite down on.
And the glove. He gets the glove, too.
Yeah, and the gloves, yeah, which is, I mean, even with our culture right now being very much, like, focused on personal protective equipment, I don't know that I would have thought of that. I know I would have thought of the knife. I probably would have thought to sanitize it, but I don't know if I would have thought about the wooden spoon and the gloves. I love all of that, and I love that he's willing to do that. He's not somebody that relishes hurting people, but he's willing to do it because he knows that it will help her.
I loved that Jonathan had this moment, because a couple episodes back in Chapter 5, something that I said was that, like I said, for once, I would love to see Jonathan be the first to get to a conclusion.
Right.
Because so much of this season, he has felt a little bit underused. I'm like, I feel like Jonathan is a very capable person. Like, yeah. In fact, that's one of the things I think I missed so much about seeing interaction between him and Will, is because he's been a very strong emotional support for Will in the past 2 seasons. So I love that we got this moment for him. He got to be the one who takes action, knows what to do, does the thing right. Digging around in her leg, maybe withstanding.
Again, it's not even because Jonathan is an incompetent surgeon. It's because the thing that he's trying to get, like, if it was a bullet, it'd be a different story. He'd go right to it. And I think that kind of blend of emotional maturity and capability is one of the things that draws him and Nancy together. But I love the moment where Elle is screaming and she's in pain, as you would expect her to be. But just the way Millie Bobby Brown delivers that line, I can do it, I started crying because there's so much strength in that. There's so much vulnerability in that. She's not angry at Jonathan. She's so incredibly hurt, but yet again, she has to be the one to put all of her vulnerability aside and use her power to save herself. And it's not because the other people don't care about her. It's just because she's the only one who can do it.
There's so much about this sequence that I think really strains credulity. Gore for gore's sake stuff happening here.
Yeah.
But those pieces that are very grounded are exactly that, and they're handled really delicately and very well in a beautiful, beautiful way.
Yeah. When she gets the thing out of her leg and she's just like staring at it and yelling, and then she flings it, Hopper stomping on it, it was perfect. We have a lot of big like hero arrivals. And I think the reason that this one still works, and it's not just like, yeah, okay, all right, the band's all back together, is it's an emotional support. Hopper doesn't actually do anything to help by stomping on the thing. It's just like an I'm here for you kind of moment.
I like the stomping on it. I didn't love actually the shots that follow that. It's very posed in that I find it odd, like especially considering that the next thing you see is like then Hopper is holding her while she's got the thing, you know, the compress to her forehead, and that feels, I totally buy that. But this almost looks like they're angry at each other. Like I would have bought it, I think, a little more if there'd been like a quippy line at the end of that. Someone said like, took you long enough. I don't know, something to like, I don't know, acknowledge the moment somehow, but it's like, we're just gonna stand here looking badass.
Yeah.
Well, especially considering that like when the rest of the kids show up, like Elle and all of them show up with the Scoops Troop, there is the moment of them seeing one another, but they all smile at each other, and then you see them all hug and everything. So it was oddly contrasty to that. So, but that might be a me thing. I don't know. I did also like though the bit where Robin starts like rattling off,
starts babbling.
Like she's just like a girl might start, like it's not really that bad. And I like the way that Steve goes, Robin, you're not helping, and the way she's like, I'm sorry. Like I actually found myself going, oh, like she is trying. Like,
yeah.
She's just, I don't know. It was also kind of nice to see Robin be a little bit, not like I wish to put her in a position where she's like uncomfortable or whatever, but like I kind of liked that they sort of went out of their way to have this little moment where she is clearly overwhelmed.
And he's not.
Yeah.
I do think it's a good reversal to have her wrong-footed and Steve not because we love Steve and hate Robin. I mean, I think we've gotten a long way to proving that is just absolutely not the case. But Robin has been completely cool as a cucumber, able to handle every situation that comes at her. She is equal to the task. And Steve has been struggling. And so it's cool to see a reversal of that, especially now that they are on better terms, such more, intimate terms in their friendship, and they understand each other so much better. I mean, I don't necessarily want to say that they're getting along better, but they're definitely better friends.
Well, she certainly knows at this point that, like, he accepts me. Like, there's no big secret looming between us. Like, he's not going to find this out and then be like, deuces.
Or even worse.
Yeah. She seemed very young in that moment. Mm-hmm. I hid my eyes for a good chunk of this sequence.
Erica's face was priceless, though. Erica is just a gem throughout this entire episode. And in general, but definitely this episode.
This is when the kids catch up the adults. Mind Flayer built this monster in Hawkins to stop Elle and kill her to pave a way into our world, and it almost did. That was just one tiny piece of it. And this is clearly the catch-up conversation that they needed to do earlier but didn't have time for. So, and everyone seems to be on the same page again. Lucas tells Hopper that his cabin is destroyed, and they theorize that if they close the gate, cut off the head from the body, they then kill it, they should be in the clear. Meanwhile, Murray brings out Alexi's drawing and map of the hub, which leads him to make a false estimate of the distance. Erica steps forward and corrects him, and that leads to an argument between them. This felt like forced conflict to me.
I actually thought that was pretty interesting. Murray has been shown to be incredibly intuitive. He's very incisive. He is able to see through people's bullshit, etc., but he doesn't like children. He talks to the children the way a lot of adults would talk to a child that's just being like, no, you have to do what I say. Because Murray is like so incredibly hyper intelligent that he's used to being the smartest guy in the room and the one who has all the answers and so on and so forth. So, you know, being taken to school by somebody who's 4 years old, in air quotes, I think would be very off-putting to him. I buy the conflict just because I think Murray is in a place of like snapping the fingers, like, okay, we're gonna go, we're gonna da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And because he doesn't give the kids credence, like he doesn't think that, you know, he thinks that they're just kids or whatever. I understand why he would be like, stop talking. But that is not one of Erica's strengths, is just, you know, blindly accepting adult authority. Plus, she's right. So I do think it's interesting to have Murray in like one situation not be the be-all end-all of omnipotent knowledge.
And I'm not even necessarily saying that like, oh, I don't buy the conflict like at all. It just very much in keeping with this season, it feels like they jump to like the most heightened combative dialogue really quickly. Like I like everything that you just said. I like the idea of them being at odds with each other. It just feels like they jumped to like the highest of heightened argument when I don't know that it needed to ramp up quite that quickly. It's like I think you could have built to it a little bit better. It kind of, I mean, honestly, it didn't not remind me of the bit in the car with Joyce and Hopper with the like children. It's like it's so elevated, and I'm like, does it need to be this heightened? I don't know. It bothered me, but not the idea of it. I just think it could have been taken down a few notches.
Yeah.
That's when Dustin and Erica volunteer to be the navigators, but Hopper just flat out says no.
See, that's actually the place where I think the conflict was a little bit forced. Hopper had every intention of handing them those walkie-talkies and saying, okay, you can be navigators from a safe place. Yeah. And that makes sense. You're not going to take a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old down into the Russian spy camp end of the world machine. You're just not going to do that.
And I have a feeling Steve and Robin probably would have backed him up on that.
Yeah. Like, look at my face, kids.
Yeah.
But him handing them those walkie-talkies and being like, yeah, you can guide us from here is a very Hopper thing to do. And once you get Cerebro involved, it's a very good idea. So that was a scene where I think, you know, instead of just being like, no, they could have jumped straight to, no, we're going to get you some walkie-talkies and you're going to guide us from here.
And that I think if they had shifted like the argumentative energy like to there, I think it would have worked a lot better because it would have built to that. You're all gonna die if you don't listen to us. Like, it makes more sense right there. It's like they could have just merged those two sequences and reorganized it a little bit and it would have worked a lot better. But that does allow for the kids, the boys specifically, to have their little reunion. And that felt a little staged, but I don't care because it's sweet.
Yeah.
We missed you too. Hopper says that they can navigate from there, but Dustin says that the signal won't reach, so they need Cerebro and a car to get there. So off the Scoop Troop goes. Meanwhile, I like that there's they don't make anything of it, but it's this little mini reunion between Murray and Jonathan and Nancy. I thought that was kind of cute. And he gives
his little proteges.
Yeah. As he instructs them on his keys. And Joyce and Will say their farewells, worrying about one another. I remember in 2019, you specifically went, he's taller than her.
I had the same reaction watching it today.
Really?
And I'm not gonna lie, I love the, you know, Will saying like, I'm worried about you, and you know, her being like, I'm okay, and giving him the big hug, and then him being like, okay, Mom, okay, Mom, I can't breathe, Mom. You know, because it is stereotypical, but not coming from a like, oh, I don't want to be hugged by my mom. It's just like, oh, okay, you're cracking my ribs. I love you too, you know.
But it also, I think, does fit. I mean, they are at that age, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
And then Hob and Elle have a bit of a heart-to-heart before they all go their separate ways. And then he tells Mike to be careful as they leave. That was really nicely done.
Because I don't think I have watched this episode since 2019.
Oh, wow.
So there were things that I did not remember. And one of them was what Hopper says in this situation. And I was like, I swear to God, please don't say, take care of our girl or something like that. And then he didn't. I really liked that he said directly to Mike to be careful, take care of yourself, because I care about you too. subverted my expectations in a very good way.
I also like the framing of those two shots, which is a really minute detail to focus on, but I actually really like the fact that it's a wide shot of Mike, so he looks smaller in the frame, which makes him appear a little bit younger, like subliminally.
Yeah.
Because they could have cut to a close-up of him, and they don't. And I thought that was a very smart decision. I mean, maybe they had a close-up and they didn't use it, and that was an editing choice, or it was specifically a cinematographic choice. Either way, very nicely done. Very subtle and understated. To Hop's frustration, however, Murray tags along with he and Joyce for a 3-man operation. And I especially like that when Hop says very childishly, "Says who?" Murray's noticeably angry reply is, "Says the man who built it." Nancy, Jonathan, Will, Mike, Lucas, Max, and Elle all pile into the car, but it won't start despite being brand new, having gas. The works. Jonathan gets out to check and finds the ignition cable is gone, just as Billy's car revs to life in the distance.
Because he knows that the Mind Flayer is coming, and he wants them to be, like, in the mall for when the Mind Flayer arrives, and all be in one place. Mm-hmm. And also, apparently the Mind Flayer cannot reach very many miles per hour. Mm-hmm. I was trying to pay attention, to distract from, like, wanting to gag. What are the actual mechanics of this monster? I don't think it can smell anything. Like, its main strength is that you just cannot kill the fucking thing, and that it's so amorphous.
Hearing you say that makes me think I wonder if that is a very deliberate, but it's hard to tell because it looks different, if that's Terminator 2, because that's very much like the T-1000.
So, it can see, because when Max, Mike, and Elle are in the gap, and it sends in those tendrils, and then we have the kind of like fake out, it rips out the mannequin that's wearing Elle's shirt and it brings it up towards its face, and then it realizes it's not her, and then it goes, wah! and tosses it. So it can see to some extent, but not well enough to tell the difference between a human and a mannequin. Mm-hmm. Presumably, it's not following scent. Presumably, it can hear, but I would think that if any of its senses were extra acute, those kids would have been dead. If
100%.
It actually had a predator's hearing, it would have heard them breathing. If it actually had a predator's sense of smell, it would have smelled Elle's blood. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if...
Ooh, that's a really good point. Because the Demogorgon,
can smell.
Nancy breaks it down.
Yeah. I think maybe the reason that it was so imperative that the Mind Flayer bite Elle is because I don't know if it could track her without that thing in her, because it's a hive mind.
The only reason that it knew they were at Hop's cabin was because she mind melded with it.
Because of Billy. Then they were able to find out that they had been at the grocery store because Billy touched her blood. So I think that's why it needs Billy, is because it just doesn't, it's just a blob monster. It doesn't actually have a lot of acute senses. I mean, even when at the very end of the episode, Billy had to bring it and had to bring Elle and put her at its feet. So as much as I don't like the Mind Flayer, I'm not actually super impressed with the Mind Flayer as an audience member. But this time watching it back and being like, okay, how does this shit work? I do actually think that there was some attempt at balance. Because they said, okay, you can't shoot it, you can't blow it up. I mean, you can hurt it, with fireworks or with Elle just making it go sploosh. Mm-hmm. But you can't actually kill it no matter what you do. And it is enormous. I think they did kind of dock a lot of its other stats as a result. Versus the Demogorgon has an incredible keen sense of smell and is incredibly fast. But you can actually hurt it a lot easier. You can kill it a lot easier.
Well, but remember, we talked about that at the end of season 1, about how you were like, this thing gets hit with machine guns and it doesn't even slow it down. But there's only one of the Demogorgon.
But it got hit with the bat and the fire, and that hurt it. I mean, I am very grumpy about the bullets not working on it, but I think that's kind of where the difference between monster mechanics versus movie logic comes in. Oh, we missed it with 350 rounds a second, or I don't know anything about guns. I don't want to. But yeah.
One thing, though, about Billy sitting in the car, it had a weird, video game vibe to me. like, well, you can't leave because this way's blocked because you've got an obstacle out there, and you haven't leveled up yet enough to be able to fight it. So
yeah, I was having him just be this like kind of disembodied threat in a way. You see that it's him, but it's just a car in the distance revving its engine. Like from the station wagon, if you're just looking out, you just see the car because it's dead of night.
Yeah.
But yeah, I find that both works and doesn't work at the same time for me, the more I think about it. Because why didn't they just like sneak out another entrance or something?
Well, I think because they need the car to get to Murray's. They can hide in Starcourt for a while, but in the elevator, Hop and Joyce lay out the plan, which descends quickly back into them squabbling again, and that Murray has to, yet again, interrupt, and he makes the comment about, they may never know we were even here, they may never know we were here, just before the door opens and several Russian soldiers hold up guns at them, which we all totally knew was coming the second he said it.
Yeah.
Although it felt a little bit like a callback to season 1 when Hop and Joyce sneak back into Hawkins' lab because he's like, well, this worked once, didn't it? And then they all get surrounded. So I actually liked it better when I thought of that. I'm like, oh, this is a lot like that. Murray launches into speaking to them in Russian, and when there's a pause in the conversation, Hopper pushes Murray aside and opens fire on all of them. And even dismisses Murray's comment of, I had it under control with, sure you did.
Yeah, that was a very Indiana Jones contrast between like one of Indiana's sidekick going through like all of this intricate bullshit and then Indy just like swooping in and handling the issue. Fair enough. I'm not going to miss the guards. It's whatever. It's, not real. But them then needing to use those uniforms, they're not going to be in any fit state. They're not going to fool anybody. They're going to be covered in blood and guts and gook and bullet holes, and they do make like a little bit of a nod to it by having there be like some like dark stains on the back of Joyce's uniform, but that's it.
Especially with that gun.
Yeah, that like those clothes are not going to be in any fit state to be worn at all. And also, Russian goons are stupid. Fine. I do think that they will recognize the sound of gunfire.
Well, and as we see later, those dead bodies
are just sitting there.
Like, my thought was way to announce your presence, Hopper. But also, when him going like, oh, sure, you had it under control. I'm like, we know how that conversation was going because we have the subtitles. Hopper had no idea. Hopper doesn't speak Russian.
Yeah, also characters firing guns in metal rooms, in close quarters. Every time. Like, I'm not a physicist, but I do know that ricochet exists. Mm-hmm. I think that is one of those things where it's like, okay, it's a movie, but I didn't dig it. It's fine.
On the road, the Scoops troop talk about Susie again, the idea of her being real. Just before Dustin and Steve turn into the field, and then the car gets stuck halfway up the hill, so they have to get out and walk.
I love the nod to them calling it Weathertop, like they're still using their Tolkien names. I love it.
From Starcourt, that's when we hear Mike repeating his SOS. Nancy jokes about the overturned car that Elle threw last episode, and then that's when Jonathan realizes about the ignition cable, so they try to turn it over, and they can't. So Elle tries, but she seems to be having trouble. Underground, a now disguised Murray and Hopper drive the cart and successfully chat with the guard who lets them pass. They stop and let Joyce out. They receive a signal from Dustin. Bald Eagle, this is Scoops Troop, do you copy? And I believe this is the first iteration of Scoops Troop in the show. And I love it, obviously, because I've been calling them that all season. And I love Dustin's detailed protocol over the radio.
Yeah.
And then I love Steve's like affirming like pat on his shoulder. It's so cute. I love it so much. That's when Murray mutters that I hate children before disappearing into the vent.
Like, that's Murray's problem. That is not a Dustin problem. That's a Murray problem.
I kind of feel like it's also like he doesn't really like people that much. Like he's not used to being around this many people for this long.
That's fair. Our boy is an introvert.
He's kind of a shut-in. He doesn't get out much. So like I think that's playing into this too.
Yeah.
Back at Starcourt, the whole group is back to pushing the car, now using the Q poles, those like metal stands, and it works. And I do really like Mike saying, I told you, physics. While Jonathan and Nancy figure out the car, Max notices Elle digging through the trash.
I thought she was looking for food, and I was like, baby girl, you are in the food court. Come on. It's okay.
I love the shared look of perplexity between Mike and Max. Like, they're like, what?
With Elle in the center, they've been at odds so much this season that it's kind of nice to have them just be like, I don't fucking know, dude.
But Elle finds the Coke can and she tries to crush it, complete with cutaways to season 1 when she first did it, but she can't now. She doesn't tell the others, though, or it doesn't appear to be the case. Although I kind of wonder, like, well, what happened after she couldn't move the car? They don't show it, obviously, because it's clearly like, well, we don't have time to question that. We just need to keep going. But it did. They're probably all at least a little bit aware.
Yeah.
Will senses the mind flayer, and they hear it crashing from outside on the roof. The glass ceiling shatters, and the mind flayer falls through, separating the groups. I gotta say, that moment works for me.
No, it does. It's scary as shit.
You feel the weight of this thing when it crashes down.
And I actually like that you can't see it very well when it's just on the roof.
Yeah.
So, like, you hear it and you hear the glass starting to go. The characters know what it is. We know what it is. But you can't actually see it until it just crashes through.
I know that a lot of the malls that I went to growing up, like, a lot of those big windows were tinted.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I think that was very believable. The Terminator appears.
Yay.
He looks over the scene, says, "The American." I'm like, that might be important later. Hopper is worried about Elle, and that leads Joyce and Hopper to finally stop their arguing, largely because Joyce calls him out on what he would have been likely to say. And Hopper says that despite all their arguing, they do make a good team. And she says that Detective Byers has a nice ring to it, which, like, I agree. And then Hopper reminds her that she's moving. Well, we'll see what happens, and that they should celebrate if they get out of there alive, and basically asks him on a date. In hindsight, this really has the, like, one day till retirement. We're setting them up for their happily ever after, but they're not going to get. Yeah, I really don't know how I feel about this. How do you feel about it?
I feel conflicted. I have wanted Joyce and Hopper to end up together since, like, the end of season 1. That's when the idea first occurred to me. We'll put it that way. I very, very much supported her relationship with Bob. So I did not experience Bob being in the series as, oh, I can't wait until he's gone. Like, I thought they were great together. And my thought, I thought wrongly that, oh, okay, I was kind of wrong about the chemistry between Joyce and Hop. This is the direction that they're going in. Like, Bob's going to be here now, and that's great. We love Bob. Not so much. And I do actually like that Joyce is taking time to grieve for Bob. That it takes the entire season for her to take a moment and stop and say, no, maybe I do want to give this connection that I have with Jim a chance. I don't love their bickering, but I do actually like that overall arc. The conversation, I 90% like it. I like that they're talking about it without talking about it. I like the blocking of it. He gets closer to her and he sits next to her, but there isn't any touching because this is still a very tentative shift. And he even tries to take it a step further, and not a pushy or in an emotional way, not in a physical way, by saying, like, just so that we're clear, because he thought it was a date before and she really didn't.
Well, I think he willfully interpreted it that way.
Yeah.
And here he's saying, I'm actually want to be respectful of the boundary that you're setting. I don't want to overstep this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was not as willing to be vulnerable before. I don't actually like that the moment breaks with her saying, stop before I change my mind. I think if she's gonna go for it and say, let's go out on a date, I think that Joyce, for her characterization and everything, if she was ready and willing to say, okay, take me to Enzo's, I would like to go out on a date with you, she would be willing to say, yes, this is a date. No, I mean like a date. Like you better bring me flowers. Or, whatever that means to her.
Or something like, Hop, we're good.
Yeah. If it was me in that situation, I would not want to leave someone hanging like that. I would want to say, like a romance date. Not like a friend date, like a romance date. And yeah, they can't dwell on that moment for any length of time because there's rather larger things going on. But I thought that there was a real opportunity for tenderness there that was missed. And it's a shame because of what happens.
Where it goes, yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay, so that helps me identify where I fall, because I actually agree with everything that you said. The only thing that I feel like is missing, having gone through this whole season, episode by episode by episode, there's still a lot between them that I don't feel like went acknowledged, in terms of him not respecting her boundaries, of them both not acknowledging where they each made mistakes. And this scene, I find, falls flat for me. And I can't say that it's anything specifically in this scene. I think the scene itself actually works. I just think because of the lead up to it, it's like it feels like we skipped a step. There's like a piece missing to me.
Yeah.
I think about the scene between them at the kitchen table in season 2 when they're reminiscing about being in high school. Like, that scene to me felt so much more romantic than this. That possibly was directing. That was possibly the context of that moment. But I don't know. It seems like so much of like what drew me to the Jopper ship was how much of an emotional support he was for Joyce, particularly in season 2, and how much he was there for her despite the fact that she was with someone else. Mm-hmm. That he was a real friend to her, and we got none of that this season. So, which is why I say there's nothing like technically wrong with the way the scene is presented. It just doesn't quite hit me the way I think it was intended to, and probably does hit for a lot of other people. In the tunnels, Murray asks for direction. Meanwhile, Steve notices that Starcourt is all lit up, and then they hear the Mind Flayer scream through the radio, followed by Dustin calling out for their safety, while the Mind Flayer stomps through the mall and the others have to hide. And since they can't answer, obviously, Steve decides to go back and help, and Robin joins him after Dustin throws her the walkie-talkie and says, "Stay in touch." Dustin also clues in the Bald Eagle group that there's a new problem. Upstairs, Mike, Elle, and Max make a run for it through the gap, which distracts the Mind Flayer, and it sends out its tendrils, as it can't fit.
I love the moment of Lucas realizing that he needs to distract the Mind Flayer. That is like classic Lucas.
With the wrist rocket!
Yeah, with the wrist rocket. And like, no, like he does it without drawing the Mind Flayer back towards his group. It's just chef's kiss.
Yeah, that was great. Murray arrives at his destination in the room and starts pulling cables. The machine starts to shut down and the Russians fire up the alert to evacuate. At least that's what it seems like they do anyway. Hopper and Joyce nod and smile, and they arrive at the safe. But their code doesn't work, because Murray appears to have gotten Planck's constant wrong, so then Dustin and Erica don't know it, but Dustin knows someone who does. At Starcourt, they rush outside and replace the cable. Jonathan starts the car while Nancy takes aim and fires at Billy, who drives towards them, and it's about to be a huge crash, except that Steve and Robin arrive and knock him off course, severely denting that beautiful car. I love the musical cue here. On that shot of Steve, he gets to have a little bit of a hero moment.
Yeah,
I love
absolutely.
it. And maybe this isn't winning a fight, but Steve stops Billy, and that counts. It counts, damn it.
I love the line exchange, "Are you okay? Ask me tomorrow."
I do too, particularly because it's from Steve to Robin. Steve's the one who was interrogated by Russians like a matter of hours before.
Yeah.
So it's so cute that he's like, "Hey, you good?"
I just drove us into another car. You good? You okay?
I would have loved to have heard the conversation between them leading up to that. Like, "Steve, what are you doing?" Steve.
Hey, what? Hey.
Steve. Or Robin was like, "Ram him. Yeah. Ram the car. Ram it.
Punch it."
Yeah. But that little peaceful moment doesn't last for long, as the Mind Flayer appears to have climbed back up to the top of the mall. Steve and Robin get a good look at it before they climb into the other car and they drive off. This made me think Exit pursued by Mind Flayer. I mean, hey, we got the Macbeth reference last time, so
yeah, I'm here for it.
And cut to Salt Lake City. I remember us both when it cut to that shot. I think you and I were like held our breath, and then when it said Salt Lake City, we both gasped. Like,
yeah. And you can see like the Cerebro like on the top of her house.
Yeah. And she's reading The Wizard of Earthsea by Le Guin. I love it so much.
She is adorable.
She's adorable. Jenna and I talked about this back in chapter 2 about how I was pretty convinced that she wasn't real and how I was mad about it.
Yeah.
I don't know that even looking back, because of how defensive I was on Dustin's behalf, I don't even know if I necessarily didn't believe that she was real. It was more of I wanted her so badly to be real because the show was making an effort to make it seem like no one believed him.
Yeah.
So my reaction was I was excited, but I was also so relieved.
Yeah.
I was like, yes, like she's real. I love it. Yay!
My big moment of relief came not so much with her being real as her being her. Like, I was so worried that they were going to do some sort of like weird science and she was going to be like, you know, she was going to look like a Victoria's Secret model or something. And I was about to be big mad about it. But the fact that she is who she is she's just this little cutie and she's perfect for Dustin. I was just like, sold, you know.
So before we get into the song itself, the thing I thought was interesting was I actually don't mind her saying, I want to hear the song from you. Because her point about, I haven't heard from you, no, like, hey, how are you? How have you been since we last saw each other? No, I miss you. None of that. Not acting like the Dustin that she knew. And she doesn't say, like, tell me you love me or anything like that. She's like, I want to do the song.
Yeah.
And then he's like, I can't. I need the number first. And she's like, okay, well, if you don't want to, like, engage with me, then I got better shit to do.
Yeah.
You interrupted me reading, so we'll talk later. And then he does. So it didn't bother me as much as I think it might have at one time.
Yeah, I love that she's assertive. On this watch, I find that him caving and singing the song rather than giving a protracted explanation. Like, I know he tries to say, like, I'm trying to save the world from Russians and monsters. And she's just like, of course, naturally. You know, you can tell that, like, she thinks this is some sort of, like, she probably thinks this is a D&D session or something like that.
Probably, yeah.
I'm not sure that I like them actually going so far as to have him sing the song. But I do love that she's like, I haven't heard from you in a week. You should know this already. And also, like, who's on the line with you? So if he could have, like, if I were script doctoring this, I'd be like, okay, this is hilarious. Maybe we can do this as, like, you know, in the gag reel or something. But let's have him say, like, Susie Pooh, I'm not alone. And I promise I will explain absolutely everything to you. But this is a real life, real emergency. Somebody is trapped. And I need Planck's constant because that's the code that will get them out. Please, I'm really, really sorry. I need you to trust me. I think that there was a way that he could have got through to her, but them going through the process of the whole song, by that time, the stakes are so high. And then them, like, cutting to the other people, like, Joyce has just, like, got her head against the wall.
Steve, like, looking at the walkie-talkie and, like, going, like, with his hand, like, I don't understand. Like, what are we hearing? Like, I mean, he may not even have heard that song before.
It's funny, but it's not actually funny in the moment. It doesn't actually work in the moment.
It doesn't work at all. I agree with everything you just said. It absolutely screeches the plot to a halt. It's annoying AF, actually, for everybody else. When we watched it in 2019, I remember thinking, I should hate this. I should hate everything about this, because it actually is very in keeping with everything else. It's over the top. It doesn't have any kind of grounded sensibility at all. But for some reason, I enjoy it every time. And I don't know if it's just because it's pretty much all we get of Susie.
Yeah.
But they sing, and she gives him the number, which opens the safe, and Hopper grabs the case. Dustin and Susie exchange sugary I miss yous, and Erica cuts him off. Like, enough. Like, that I loved. We're so done.
Yeah.
I mean, especially after, like, that whole number. She's like, no.
No more. I absolutely loved Susie's line, I miss you more than all... What is it exactly? I miss you more than all of the stars in our galaxy multiplied or something. That's so sweet. Oh my god, I love it.
Max, Elle, and Mike get outside just as Billy comes to and follows them. I really like the detail of Max thinking to close the electric gate.
Yeah.
Even if Billy still catches it in time to get through, it's a nice detail. And I like that it shows her quick thinking, again, in a moment like that. Mind Flayer turns around as the Griswold family group, plus Steve and Robin, swing around back the way they came. Underground, Hopper empties the control room of all the people by firing a bunch.
I mean, I would do the same thing if I were those Russians. Like,
Oh, yeah.
weird American. All right.
No,
I'm out.
yeah, again, it felt, I didn't love that. Joyce and Hop then get a look at the machine and the gate. And it occurred to me on this watch that Joyce never saw the gate the second in season 2.
Yeah.
So it would be a bit of a shock. Billy, black-veined and all, attacks the 3 kids, knocking each of them out, picks up Elle and carries her back through the empty Starcourt. Joyce and Hop prepare to turn the key, but the Terminator arrives before they can do it.
I hate everything about this.
Pretty much everything that happens from this moment on, not just with them in the control room, but with everything that happens with Billy upstairs, with the stuff happening like at Cerebro, like everything that happens from this point on is pretty much just, it's a convenience thing. I mean, even the only reason that they can't turn the key is because they deliberately go 1,
Yeah.
2. It's like there was no need for that.
No, they want to turn the fucking thing off. Turn it off.
And especially with how shoot first, ask questions later, quick to action, don't stop, don't think, that Hopper has been this season. Now is when he chooses to stop and be like, okay.
I would have had them take much longer to get to the control room.
Yeah.
One of my pet peeves in filmmaking is you have to take it up to the last possible moment. It's not necessary. It's and I know, sitting here as an audience member, it's another thing that like really takes me out of the moment. I know the exact reason that they stood there and went 1, 2. It was because they had constructed the rest of the episode up until the Mind Flayer dies so that there could be a big fight sequence between Hopper and the Terminator, and they needed to have Hopper be on the other side of the glass. Honestly, just I have a huge fucking problem with Joyce being in the room and Hopper being in front of the machine, because let's just think for a minute about everything that Joyce has been through. And she has just kind of come to terms with the fact that she either is in love with Hopper or is falling in love with Hopper, and now she has to kill him. Mm-hmm. And she knows, like she fully knows she's blowing this thing up. He is going to die. She just watched him barely survive a hand-to-hand combat fight to the death, and now she has to kill him. I actually sincerely don't have a lot of a problem with the way the rest of the troops' story arc goes for the rest of the episode, like the timing of it, and also like when they're figuring out what to do and they start launching the fireworks and then they run out of fireworks and they're like, close it now. I get all of that. I just think that that tension would have been a lot better served if they had taken more time to get to the machine versus got to the machine and then again had everything screech to a halt by having this lame ass fight. And like, I'm not trying to be mean, but it's not a very well choreographed fight.
No.
It's not well shot. They clearly were not able to yeah.
Something that actually I thought of was the fact that they make the joke back in chapter 4 about, you know, the whole like, dude, have you ever actually won a fight, to Steve? Dustin saying that to Steve. And how something that Justin and Heather and I talked about was the fact that like, even if Steve had beaten Billy and Jonathan, you're talking about an armed guard. You're talking about someone who probably has some form of military training. You're talking about a guy who's got this gun. Granted, Grigori doesn't have a gun as far as I'm aware. I think, honestly, the same kind of question applies here. It's sort of like, we've seen Grigori he's going to have more combat training than Hopper, given the context of where he's come from, given his superior strength that we've seen him use to a supernatural extent. Yeah. I think Hopper is going to lose that fight.
Yeah.
The fight just, it feels like a lot of toing and froing with Billy, and then with Owens and like the National Guard or whomever flying in. It's like they all arrive like right after Billy dies, right after they close the gate. It's like, well, that's convenient. It's a movie, you just gotta go with it. But, okay, if you're gonna make all of these things happen, and you're gonna put all of us through this, then make it mean something.
I know everybody kind of accepts that Hopper is willing to die, and I think everybody kind of expects that Hopper will die. I don't think it's necessary to kill Hopper. I feel like there's almost this air of like, well, we gotta kill Hopper. Hopper's gotta die. No, Hopper does not have to die.
No, he doesn't.
I think there was a way to disappear Hopper without doing it like that. I think what it comes down to is that I don't have a problem with him showing up in Russia. I don't even have a problem, and I think you and I differ on this, I don't even have a problem with everyone presuming that he's dead. I do have a problem with the way it played out because it doesn't make sense to me. I think it puts way too much on Joyce. Yeah, it doesn't work.
I will be honest that a lot of how Hopper's death hits now is very different for me personally than it hit in 2019 because my dad was still alive in 2019, and so I was more than a little apprehensive to watch this sequence precisely for that reason. That said, in 2019, I actually still feel this way in spite of how different it hits me. One area that is unchanged is the fact that I still feel like, I think my exact words at the time were, stop pushing me, get your hands off my back. It felt like they just were trying so hard to make you feel sad. And because they lay it on so thick, I think that makes me less emotional in a way than I might have been if they'd played it down a little bit more. And what bothers me about that is the fact that it's like, because they make it so awful, only to have him come back. That's the part that makes me feel like I've been emotionally jerked around. Yeah, so it's interesting. I don't actually hate the idea. That's actually something I really love, the way the very last couple of scenes of this episode are handled. I think they handled the coming of age stuff really, really well with the moving away. It's beautifully handled. And also the grief side of things. I don't like that we don't see any of it from Joyce.
Yeah.
That's my only kind of caveat with that, but in terms of the way that Elle reacts, I think they portray that really beautifully, and so it felt like this beautiful send-off. And so I'm not mad that Hopper's still alive, please don't get it twisted.
Yeah.
But in a way I'm kind of I don't know, I find I'm a little bit conflicted about that.
Yeah.
But back upstairs, that's when Billy lays 11 down, an offering for the Mind Flayer, which returns the shower of fireworks start. Yes, Lucas. We revisit Billy's memories, and 11 recounts the details from the beach.
I caught this time that the black veins actually retreat as she's talking to him. Look, let's just talk about Billy.
Let's talk about Billy.
The memory is really sweet. No shade or whatever on the memory. Elle using what's left of her power, to tap into his thoughts and feelings and to find his humanity, I think is very, very interesting. Out of context, this scene actually works really well. If you take, if season 2 Billy was an identical twin and season 3 Billy is just a different dude, this all actually works really well.
Yeah.
But I don't understand how we got from needing to inject Billy in the neck with a sedative in order to keep him from committing murder to, Max saying, "You're Billy Hargrove. I'm your sister." What? Huh? In season 2, Max does not have any familial feeling toward Billy. And in season 3, she absolutely does. In the preview of season 4, she absolutely does. And I just don't understand where that tone shift came from. If we had a scene, after the thing where Max laid down this ultimatum and she was like, "You leave me alone, you leave my friends alone. I've got the spiked bat. I'm gonna castrate you." And he's kind of like, "Okay, message received." If there had been something in season 3 to indicate okay, he was making an effort to be a better person, specifically toward Max. Give me something.
At the end of season 2, that scene when they have that icon that we talked about, the icon, if he'd come in and said something like, "You look nice," or something even just that simple, or if he smiled and ducked his head or something, but that wasn't what they were interested in.
Also, he was real fucking racist. Here's another thing. My kind of forays into fandom Twitter and the fandom social media of all kinds is very much in a enemies to lovers ships kind of space. That's just one of the dynamics that I really love. So the kind of like Venn diagram of people who are into some of the ships that I like and also into Stranger Things, a lot of them really love Billy. I mean, there are some people who ship Billy with Steve, but a lot of them were just like really, really like hurt and angry when Billy died. And one of the things that I remember someone that I follow and usually agree with and so on saying was, it's not like, I don't need to like Billy as a person, but let's look at what Billy's death does to Max. Max wanted a brother, and now even that possibility gets taken away. So I think that is really interesting. And when the trailer for season 4 came out, another person that I like and follow was joking around, and she was like, I'm back on my like Billy 11 clown bullshit. And that is not something that had ever occurred to me. Like, yeah, like Billy and 11 as like an enemies to lovers ship, if he's alive in some capacity. What I'm getting at is, I think there are readings of Billy out there that are completely different from mine and yours. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people are going from a season 3 Billy
100%
versus a season 2 Billy.
Yeah.
And I kind of find it hard to let go of season 2 Billy.
We shouldn't have to. They established Billy a very specific way, and then season 3 is a complete departure. If you wanted to get him here, fine. But there's no transition. That's the thing Jenna and I talked about a lot throughout this season, is the fact that they jump to these extremes, and it's like, it's not the what, it's the how. Mm-hmm. How did we get here? Mm-hmm. And we never really get an explanation for that.
Yeah. Weirdly,
the reaction I've seen to the season 4 promo, I've seen a lot of reactions where people are going, why do we care about Billy? Why is she grieving him? He was an asshole. And let me be very clear, I don't subscribe to that belief. I completely understand why Max would be dealing with some pretty significant grief, no matter what her relationship was with Billy.
She watched him die.
And even if you're going off of just the second season version of him, I think there's a lot of complexity and twisted-ish around their relationship.
Yeah, and also, again, she watched him die trying to save her.
Yes.
So...
Well, and saving 11.
Yeah.
So my issue with Billy in this season, and particularly with his death, is that I feel like they cheat. I obviously have a lot of very strong feelings about the way that they completely bait and switched us with his character, especially because I really liked that character in season 2. I didn't like him as a person, but I found his character, especially as an antagonist, I found him fascinating.
Yeah.
He created this really interesting new dimension to the landscape of the show. Mm-hmm. And it was understated, and I loved the fact that he was a human villain, very not unlike Brenner, to be honest. Mm-hmm. He added this level of dimensionality to Max, for example. Like, the fact that he was this very real threat, he wasn't possessed, he had no connection to the Upside Down. And to me, his death is a cop-out. I'm not sorry to have that opinion. It's a cop-out.
I know, I think a lot of people, like people who like Billy and wanted him to be redeemed, mm-hmm. also think that his death was a cop-out.
And I actually think it's possible that we may, even with him being dead, I think we may still see this explored a little bit in season 4. That's my hope. It's not an expectation. That they may try to bridge the two, depending on how, it entirely depends on how Max reacts, how she responds to it, and what the interpretation of her grief ends up looking like. But there's so much unexplored potential in what would have happened if he had survived. Because then they would have had to have confronted that. Mm-hmm. And also, as far as it being a cop-out, it's like they know they do not have to acknowledge this sacrifice absolves him of anything and everything that he's ever done. And I don't appreciate that.
No, I am also, as an enemies to lovers enthusiast, not in this instance, like I don't actually ship Billy with anybody, but one of the things that comes out of me being an enemies to lovers enthusiast is that I hate the trope of redemption through death. It's not heroic. It's not aspirational. I hate it. Like, I just viscerally hate it. To the point that, like, if I know that that's the direction something's going to go in, I just won't watch it because I know I'm not going to vibe with it. So I am not okay with that for Billy any more than I am okay with that for any other antagonistic character, or really any character. Like, even if a character is a completely decent person, and they're just like, their shot at heroism is through killing themselves.
Well, the fact is, we've seen this show handle redemption. Like, that is Steve's complete arc.
Even Hopper's to an extent.
The show is, this is what I mean. I'm like, when I say this season has been just full of wasted opportunities, Billy is a wasted opportunity. And honestly, if they had been able to, if they'd kept him alive and they had bridged the gap between those two versions of him, their storytelling history shows us that they are capable of that. And that would have been amazing.
Yeah.
It's a bummer, man. Mm-hmm. It's a huge bummer. And that's no disrespect to Dacre Montgomery.
No, not at all.
Or to Millie Bobby Brown. I think they both play this sequence really, really well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I already can feel that I like this sequence a little bit more based on your interpretation of the fact that us seeing those flashbacks are her, like, transferring them to him, that's a use of her power. That'd be really cool. I like that idea. Even if technically she's not supposed to have her powers anymore, I prefer that read anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, we get the Joyce looking down onto the empty room, and we get Max collapsing into Elle's arms, which despite everything, I actually like that moment, that beat. It's a nice moment for Elle to be there for Max.
Yeah.
Up by Cerebro, Dustin and Erica watch as this, overhead, this fleet of helicopters fly in, which, as much as it frustrates me that, like, oh, of course, now they show up.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful shot.
It is. And they did mention that, like, it might take them longer to get there because Joyce yelled at them. Like, Hopper was like, you yelled at them like it was a parent-teacher conference. So
even still, it's like, right, it's not like they show up, like, in an hour after that or, like, right before. It's like, no, it's right after.
Yeah.
Owens gets out. I do remember feeling like both really happy to see him, but also really mad that, like, you should have been here this whole time.
Yeah.
like not mad at him exactly, but being like, I wish he'd have been here for more of this season. Yeah. Just because I like that character. I'm so glad he's coming back for season 4. Mm-hmm. I like Paul Reiser in the role. I like that character. He's really interesting. I'm really excited to see what they do with him. I love, too, the expression on Owens' face. I don't even know how to describe it, but the look on his face when he's seeing the gate. Yeah. It's kind of a holy shit expression. Yeah. But it's good. It's a good moment.
Yeah, and when he sees, like, when he sees the remnants of the machine and he sees what's left of the gate, granted, it's like 99.95% closed. So I don't think he's reacting to the possibility of the gate, like, reopening necessarily.
No.
But I think he's just, like, realizing what was going on.
Yeah.
Kind of like under his nose. He hasn't been in Hawkins.
Yep.
But, I am sure he has been working hard trying to keep exactly this kind of shit from happening. Mm-hmm. And yet.
Yeah. Outside, firemen arrive. More soldiers escort Murray and Joyce out. And she's reunited with Will, who runs up and hugs her, while Elle looks around for Hopper and realizes from Joyce's one look what's happened. 3 months later, the news has gotten hold of everything, and secrecy is starting to crack. The news report itself is kind of cheesy, but I actually thought this was a nice way to get into the latter half of these last few scenes. I thought it was a nice buffer.
And I think that as cheesy and clickbaity as the news sequence was, it was totally typical of the way news was at that time. So this is not necessarily an instance where they're, like, going over the top.
Not
like,
at all.
I really had to laugh and be like, oh God, at the, is Satanism on the rise?
The satanic panic, I think. Yeah. Also, goodbye, Mayor Klein. Then, as the news report ends, we cut to Steve and Robin walking into the video store to apply for jobs at Family Video. Too bad Keith is the one interviewing them.
There's a lot to unpack in this scene, and I kind of just want to set the box on fire.
I'm gonna totally co-sign that. That's amazing. Like, this is another one where I'm like, I can't be objective about this scene. I hated it in 2019. I still hate it now. I'm so over making Steve look stupid. I'm over it.
Here's the thing, though. I am a movie person. I'm not married to one genre. Like, I'm not a Marvel movie person or a art house movie person or a classic movie person or, you know, nothing older than the 90s person. I am kind of an equal opportunity movies person.
Yeah.
But I have a deep love for artsy fartsy shit. I have not seen any of the movies that Robin mentioned. I didn't even recognize the names, and maybe that's like me telling on myself a little bit, but and the 3 films that Steve names, and then he says like classics, man. It's true. They are. I don't like Animal House. I fucking hate Animal House, but it is considered a classic.
Here's the thing. If you're talking about getting a job at a video rental place, you're actually going to want the person who knows what the recent releases are to sell it. You're going to like both of those 2 candidates. Mm-hmm. So Steve mentioning because those were current, like Back to the Future had just come out.
Yeah.
Return of the Jedi was also a recent release. And
Animal House was relatively new.
Compared to it is now, for sure. So he's showing that he's aware of current releases. That's not insignificant.
I think the difference here is that Robin is reading the room and Steve is not, because he doesn't know how to with Keith. Yeah, like I am sure that, you know, Robin probably also likes A New Hope. Mm-hmm. Or, you know,
the one with the teddy bears.
Which, justice for Steve. That's my favorite in the original as well. I basically am an Ewok, so that's kind of why. But, so for real, I think this is a moment mirroring the "you suck" conversation back at Scoops Ahoy, where because Steve is no longer relying on the kind of machismo and all of these other like shitty traits that he used to have in order to navigate social situations, he kind of doesn't know how anymore. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And Robin does, because she hasn't gone through this metamorphosis. And also, Robin knows Keith better than Steve knows Keith.
And Keith hates Steve.
Like, I agree with you that this scene is set up to make Steve look like a dingus. However, I think no matter what Steve said, Keith would have found some way to make it about Steve looking stupid.
Yeah.
If they had swapped, like, you know, if Steve had listed the films that Robin listed and Robin had said, you know,
Back to the Future,
Star Wars, and Animal House, then Keith would have been like, you're lying, or we don't sell that shit here, or something.
Well, I'm also referring to the fact that the last shot of Steve in this season is him knocking over the cardboard cutout and making the like, oh, fast times statement, which I remember that was one of my issues, was like, great, so the last time we see Steve, potentially forever, because even up to watching this last episode, you and I thought this was the end.
Yeah.
But it was like, wow, that's the last we're ever going to see Steve, is him looking like an idiot. Great. We talked in chapter 7 about how important and meaningful that character has been for me. So I was still in the midst of like not understanding what happened in the episode before. So I was still like, wow, so we have this amazing moment before, but now he just, again, we're taking time out of the episode to laugh at him. But Robin's defense for him about the like, girls are going to be coming in to see him, how much better would that be if they had gone with your idea back in chapter 1, where that was actually happening, where she's not lying here.
Yeah.
It made me appreciate your variation a lot, all the more, because it was like, yeah, that would have made this moment even stronger.
She actually says, we sold so much ice cream, they had to bring in more.
That's obviously a lie, though. He wasn't, but and that's the thing. Like, she's bullshitting to get him this job, which, everything else aside, I actually think that her defending Steve is really sweet. Mm-hmm. And I really do like that she goes to bat for him so hard in this moment. I thought that was great. And I look forward to seeing their friendship grow in the next season. Mm-hmm. The buyers are moving. Lucas and Max make fun of Dustin and Susie, by which he is not amused. I do love this. This whole dynamic is great.
Yeah.
And we get this whole exchange between Mike and Will. And Mike says, well, what if you want to join another party? And Will says, not that's not going to happen, or that's not possible, or something like that. This is the moment that I think is missing the "there's nothing wrong with you" exchange. I think this was the moment for it. They're acting like all is forgiven. That scene between them in the garage never happened. Someone actually commented on that clip that I posted and said, well, apparently Schnapp said that it's just that he's a child, that he's still younger than them.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel the same way about that. Maybe a little less strongly than I do about Dacre Montgomery saying, why play Billy as straight?
I appreciate knowing that from how the actors come to a role like that. But in terms of like, how does it translate, and what was the intention from the writing and from the direction? I think those things matter. In chapter 5, they act like that scene that exchange did not happen between Mike and Will, but it did. And I feel like this would have been the moment to resolve it, one way or the other.
Yeah.
But it's more just like Will is like, no, of course, I'm still part of this group. And I'm like, and I also don't like that, because it's kind of like, you guys are growing apart. That's okay. That happens. It's okay if Will finds a new community when they move. Really hope that they don't shy away from that in season 4, that he has a new community, that he has new friends, because that happens when you hit high school. It just does, and I think that's healthy for Will. Jonathan and Nancy say their farewells in his empty bedroom. I love this whole scene. This is great. I think in 2019, I was weirdly like not expecting Jonathan to go with Joyce.
Oh, neither was I. I was expecting him to stay in Hawkins.
Yeah, because he's an adult. He
has a job.
Yeah.
He has a girlfriend.
But they don't have their jobs anymore, but he'll probably get another one.
Yeah.
But I actually really like that he does go with them, because I actually think thematically it's very fitting. For Jonathan, his family is always going to come first.
Yeah.
At least to a degree. I mean, at the same time, like, yeah, he's an adult. He can go get a new job and everything. He is still pretty young, and Nancy's still in high school.
Yeah.
She has her senior year left, if my math is correct. But I love the fact that there's the callback to Murray and to season 1 because he says the shared trauma thing, but then their hands are in the frame with the matching scars. This was handled so beautifully.
Yeah.
Jonathan and Nancy have the most consistent and cohesive storyline in the whole 3rd season.
Yeah.
Elle clears out her closet and is still unable to use her powers, so Mike comes in and helps. And he says that her powers will come back. And he rattles off a bunch of plans, and then it gets, for them seeing each other, and then it gets awkward. And then she turns around and she sets it up. She gives him the chance to follow through with what he started to say, and
can't make it.
He can't do it. And so then she says she loves him too. I don't know. I don't like it. I don't dig it. This would have been a great moment to give him a fulfillment of an emotional arc. Even if he doesn't say he loves her, just something. Because even when she walks out of the room, he looks confused.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird. And then we get Hopper's speech, intercut with the hugs and the tears and the goodbyes, underscored by the reprise of Peter Gabriel's Heroes. The sequence was hard to watch.
Yeah.
But I do really like the way the show handles and honors this part of life, specifically the coming of age, that, the moving away of friends or of being the one to leave. Yeah, I mean, there is the grander scale of the grief and the loss that they've all suffered. But I also think that they're covering that like first time that one deals with losing your friends and loved ones, both in terms of the moving away and in terms of death, and how big of a deal that can be, especially when you're young. And they don't make fun of it. They don't cheapen it with humor, not once the montage starts. And they really portray that beautifully between each group, Jonathan, Joyce, and the kids. And then, but then adding Hopper's voiceover and his wishes for Elle and that parental love, it just really twists the knife. But in a good way. I actually really love everything that's here through to the end, like until you hit the credits. I love the bit where Dustin and Lucas bring Erica the D&D books.
Yes.
I love that so much. She's like accepting her nerddom. It's great. And then the last shot, up to the credits, is the interior of the empty buyer's house. But then we do get that mid-credits sting. As I recall, when that thing spun, because I think you and I were just sitting there like, emotional messes. When that scene spun up, I think we were mad.
Knowing that there's a season 4 just totally recontextualizes everything. I stand by what I said about, like, the way that they got rid of Hopper was bullshit, but I have no problem. Well, I do have a problem with the credit scene this time, and that's a very, very Heidi problem, which is that it squicks me out, and that's why I say it's a Heidi problem, to, like, drag a defenseless person to certain death and then make them watch their death loom over them and they can't do anything about it while they're, like, begging for mercy. I just, for real, don't like it.
It's very horror.
Yeah, so I don't like it for that reason, but narratively, I have no issue with it.
Because I don't like it either, but I actually really like the production design of that whole prison. And it was a nice contrast to, like, the base we've seen all season.
Yeah.
You know, it looked different. It looks earthy, and just Chris Trujillo, the production designer, another shout out, like, right up to the very end of this season. Like, that's a really great looking set. Yeah, I feel a lot better about that sequence now, knowing that there is more to come. I think that's a really great segue into our final thoughts, not just of this episode, but this season in general. I absolutely love Robin. I'm so glad she's here. Like, I have a very, very minimalist key ring, but one of the things I have on my key ring is a Scoops Ahoy doohickey. I don't even know what it would be called.
Like a mini lanyard.
Yeah. I really like the dynamic between Steve, Robin, Dustin, and Erica. I'm glad that we're going to see Robin again in season 4. We love Alexi. I love that they brought Murray back, and I'm glad he's going to be around next season too, because I think that character adds a lot. In season 3, they continue to explore this idea of teamwork in their finale, in terms of, like, the coordination of the teamwork and everybody having to team up, and that we're not all on the same page until all of our heroes come together and then work as a team.
Right.
That's still very much in play, and I appreciate that, and I really respect that. I like what they did with Karen, and I mean, yeah, that scene between Karen and Nancy in chapter 4.
Just fantastic. It's one of my favorite moments in the season. Even though I don't like the way that they explored it, I like that they gave Elle a friend who's not Mike. In particular, had her be friends with another girl. I think that's really important. Yeah, like, there are a lot of moments that I really like in this season. And I think that's kind of what makes the things that I don't like that much more frustrating.
The other thing that I want to circle back to is that quote about lightening things up. I think that was a great idea. I think that mostly applies to the beginning of the season. Like, I almost wonder if they wanted to do that, but that's not really what the show is for.
Yes.
So they ended up being even darker than they have been in the past. I've also come around on, I can't remember if Justin and Heather talked about this, but I know that you, Jenna, and Sarah all said that this season felt rushed. And for a long time, I didn't necessarily agree or disagree with that. To me, it felt like there was a lack of, it felt like they backed themselves into a corner in terms of, you know, they wanted to try something new and different. And I actually do respect that. Something they've said about where they're going in the 4th season is that they always want to be trying something new so that it doesn't feel like they're redundant. And that I actually have a lot of appreciation and respect for. There's proof all over the place of the fact that they let characters grow and evolve as they go. And I think that's incredibly important to any creative pursuit, because you as the creator grow and change as you develop. But I do think that they said, well, we're going to set it in the summer, we're going to lighten things up, but that takes away some of the things that I think they had relied on for 2 seasons in a row. And I think they struggled a little bit with that. But I also have come to agree with all of you that I do think there is a feeling that it was rushed. Now, what caused that rush, I'm not sure. But I think my ultimate takeaway is it's not even necessarily that I don't like what's here. And honestly, I don't begrudge people for enjoying it. What I struggle with this season is feeling like I have to like what's here because this is what it is now. This is Stranger Things. And the collective fan base seems to prefer 3 to 2. And I just find that really upsetting personally because of how meaningful season 2 was. So I want to actually also take this moment to thank you, Heidi, and thank Jenna and Justin and Heather and Sarah for all participating in this long exploration of this show with me, because it's been incredibly validating. So, what you can expect with the podcast. My current plan is to, when part 1 releases, to gather as many of the co-hosts as want to be part of this and to do general reactions to part 1. Not to do a episode by episode breakdown right away, because between all of us, I don't think that there's really time to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then same thing for part 2, general reactions to those episodes, and then I guess to season 4 as a whole. Depending on how that goes, then proceed to do an episode by episode breakdown of season 4. After season 4, I don't really know what comes between that and season 5. I actually had a request to do character analyses, which actually I find very compelling, but we'll see. I'm also in the process of starting another podcast, of launching a new podcast, which has nothing to do with Stranger Things, which is D&D related. That's still in very early development, so we'll see where this goes, but that's the current plan. General reactions to part 1 of season 4, and then part 2 of season 4, and here's hoping that it will be a blast.
Yeah.
In the meantime, until the next episodes come out, if you've got comments, questions, thoughts on season 3, on the show as a whole, you can join the conversation. Just please be kind. We're on Instagram as @coffeeandcontemplationpod and TikTok as @coffeeinhawkins. Like, share, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and consider leaving us a review. Again, big thanks to Heidi, to Jenna, to Sarah, Justin, and Heather for joining me this season. This podcast has been a real labor of love, and it has really been a blast having you on this journey with me and getting to share this show with all of you.
Yeah, it has.
And thank you to the listeners for listening and joining as you have. It's really astonishing.
That's gonna wrap up our contemplations on season 3. So until season 4 drops, we will leave you here.
See you on the other side. Over and out. We did it! We covered all 3 seasons of Stranger Things. I can't believe it.